Good morning, lads and lasses of the pipe smokers of Ireland pipe community. Glad to be here with you again today. As you can see, I'm not smoking a pipe to my chagrin. Yesterday, Easter, we had our Easter family gathering at my son Nick's, and I was in Nick's man's room, and we were all smoking pipes together and such, and couldn't continue, and inhaled a lot of smoke, and I had a pretty severe episode last night. Felt like a heart attack almost. All pain up here in my lungs and my throat, and so had a fitful night. Had to use an inhaler and nasal inhaler as well to breathe. At Fresno here, we're in a valley that's a basin, basically a pollution, and pollution is fed to us from San Francisco, and it blows down through the mountains and comes and settles in the valley. So Fresno's air quality is terrible. Very, very terrible for people that suffer from asthma and bronchitis and the like. And my particular thing is that the linings of my lungs, whether it's the pleural linings, they can get wet or they can get dry, and I can suffer from both. And since my bout with bronchitis in December, I've been having a go of it. I just can't get well, and just talked to my doctor on Friday, and he just said, we blasted everything with antibiotics, and you're just going to have to tough it out. You're in Fresno, so it's going to be a long, arduous journey. I can still smoke my pipe outside, but didn't want to risk it today, so pardon me not having my pipe. Just imagine it, because I am, and I miss it. But thought I'd fire off a video to you anyway, because we have in this community experienced in a communal setting a grief, as it were, that's been observed, and that's our shared grief over young Shane Burke's family tragedy of losing their 18-month-old little boy. And reading some of the remarks of some of you on this site, it was just quality remarks. And as a pastoral counselor and a grief counselor, I just wanted to take this time today to pass on to those of you that care to know how best we can help a person in grief, whether it's a family member or a friend. I mean, in particular, in this community, those of us that don't personally know Shane and don't see Shane face to face, but have, as it were, a long-distance internet relationship with him. Not what is our obligation, but what part of our humanity can we share and invest in the long and arduous journey this young family is going to go through in the next year or two or three or four. Usually a traumatic grief event, has a 2-year shelf of severity, and then it kind of tapers off. But when you lose a child, there's always a hole in your heart. And the wrong way of thinking about things is that grief is something that people will feel for a while and then they'll get over it. Well, you do kind of get over the hump. You do go on. You do move on. You don't experience every day as a fresh jolt of pain that you do in the first couple of years. But like I say to people, grief is like a lapdog, and it's untimely, it's unruly. There might be an anniversary of the death of a loved one which you feel nothing. Then one day you're out on your fence post, or you're out at your gate, or you're out sitting down having a pipe and thinking about things, and all of a sudden a wave of grief just jumps over. It's just like a lapdog that jumps in your lap and wants you to pet it. And when that happens, you need to pet it. You need to observe it. You need to express it. Let it run its course. And then it will gradually dissipate, and you can go on. It's disrespectful and unempathetic than to think about someone's grief as something to get over. Some people do. Those people are a particular kind of personality or breed, and they just do. They just learn, move on, get on with life. Things happen, and that's that. And those kind of people may tend to think, why doesn't everybody else just pull themselves up by the bootstrap? And then there's other people who love hard and grieve hard, and they just don't quite get over it. And of course, the manner in which you lose somebody is it plays a part. If you lose somebody suddenly and unexpectedly, like a child, and most certainly like Shane and his family did, then you have a clutch moment. You're losing them. You try to hold on. It's like a traumatic event. You're not ready. And that's different from someone who has a long spell of cancer, or they're dying from other kind of disease, dread disease, and it's a long and arduous battle, losing battle, in which they finally die because there's a compassion fatigue that takes the place there, and you know the end is coming, and you kind of can prepare for it best you can, so that when it happens, it's kind of like a relief of sorts. And sometimes those kinds of things are felt less severe, not always, but sometimes, just because it was expected and it was a long and exhausting journey. But in any respect, that's probably more information than you want to know today. So let me just get to the point, and forgive my bluntness, but how can we help Shane? Besides just the sentiment of saying, bummer, man, or I'm sorry, dude, or I'm praying for you. Those are very helpful, but that's not all that we can do. We can do more. Let me give you about 4, 5, 6 things we can do on an ongoing basis in support of the arduous journey that Shane and his wife and his family are going to have to go through, and the pain they're going to have to feel on a daily, if not hour to hour, moment by moment basis for a while to come. This can be traumatic enough to change their life for the worse. Or if their faith is strong and they can move through it, and somehow in the future find some kind of context or meaning behind it, that will help them move on. But it could also cripple them. And that wouldn't be saying that they are weak or that something's wrong. If it did cripple them, it would cripple me. So in any case, there's a couple of things that we can do. First of all, empathy. Especially the empathy of the heart and empathy of the ear. You know, empathy is different from sympathy. Sympathy is creating distance between ourselves and the person that's suffering so that we don't feel the suffering. We just take pity on them and say, oh man, it's tough business, those poor children in Africa that are starving to death. After I just had a cheeseburger, those people over there in Africa are starving to death, and bless the poor, hungry children in the world. That's sympathy. There's no emotional investment in it. I've made no room in my heart for their pain. I don't feel that pain. I just regret that they have to go through that. Empathy is different. Basically, the meaning of empathy is creating space in your heart and in your mind for someone else's pain, so that you don't just take pity on what they're feeling, but you choose to share that feeling with them. When you show empathy towards someone, that person's pain feels a little less heavy because they know it's being shared. And so creating space in our hearts for Shane and the Burke family is making the decision to let ourselves feel discomfort over remembering he's uncomfortable, that they're suffering, that whether you're praying, I'm not going to assume all of you pray. I've been on some of your websites and know that some of you are quite hostile to the Christian faith and are still my friends. And I respect the fact that that's your right to feel that. And I try not to be insulted by what you put on your website. It's not easy. But for some of you, I've just chosen not to go on your websites anymore because it is insulting to my faith. But that's your right, and I still like you. You're still my friends, and I still respect you as you respect me. But for some of you that are praying folk, praying empathetically is different than praying sympathetically because you enter into the feeling of grief of your friend. It's not easy if you've never felt that. If you're younger, it's harder because younger people, on the whole, haven't had enough life experiences yet to know what hard suffering is. Not all of them, but some of them. Perhaps the majority of them. So if you've never lost a loved one, it's going to be tough to empathize with him. But if you've ever suffered any kind of heartbreak, any kind of loss that hurt your heart and caused you sorrow, whatever that might be, you can kind of garner that together and kind of sort of make a connection with what Shane and his family is feeling times 100. Empathy is making room in your heart to feel the pain of someone else. And this community could do Shane and the Burke family a great service in that. I know that this is not the only grief, and Care has shared about other losses of friends in this group. I'm not addressing that may be as well for you to do that, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm just thinking right now about some of you and what you've shared with me about what you could do further to help Shane and his family. Empathetic heart, creating space in your heart for him. Also, an empathetic ear. If you get a chance to talk to him or otherwise communicate with him, to just being able to let him talk to you and share how he's feeling without feeling an urgency to answer back. No matter whether you agree with what he has to say or not, whether what he has to say sounds off or on, doesn't matter. What a grieving person needs is someone else to listen to them and be there with them, be present with them without having to respond. I know one of my friends lost his son, and he said one of the greatest acts of support he received from his friend was a friend that came over to his house one particularly tough day. And that friend had brought with him a ginormous bag of potato chips. He came in, didn't say a word, just patted him on the back, sat down on the couch with him, let him cry a little bit, opened up the bag of potato chips and ate potato chips with him. They watched something on TV. They ate potato chips, and when the potato chips were gone, he gave his friend his space and he left. And his friend said it didn't require anything from me. Didn't require conversation from me because a grieving person has very little energy to run on as it is. So feeling like they have to feel some way in front of you or say something in front of you sometimes is overwhelming because they're depressed, sorrowful. But a friend going there and requiring nothing from them, just eating a bag of potato chips, that's not only an empathetic heart, but an empathetic ear that says, I'm here to listen, I'm here to hear you, and what I hear you say and how I hear you express it, I'm going to weep, and I'm going to weep with you. I'm going to cry with you. One of the things I did with my daughter one time, she was a teenager, she's going through all kinds of things and feeling all kinds of things, and as a dad, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. and she was by her bed, and I just knelt down by her bed. She's sitting on her bed. I was knelt down by her bed, and I held her while she cried, and I cried, and I just cried with her, just wept with her. Felt bad for my kid. And she said that of all the things I ever did as a dad, that was one of the hallmark things I did that communicated to my kid I loved her, and I was in solidarity with her. That wasn't trying to fix her so that in her feeling better, I'll feel better. But just, I'm not going to let you be alone and hurt by yourself. So I'm crawling in there, in that space that you're at, and I'm going to hurt with you. And when you do that, it just kind of halves the load. Reaching out is a third thing you can do. And what can we do in long distance? We can do emails. If we go on Shane's Facebook page and just write in a message to him, a brief message saying, if you care to trust me with your email, I'd like to email you a message or so, and it's up to him, and it's fine if he doesn't, because too much of that could be overwhelming too. You could leave him a private text message that he can delete if he wants, and you can put on there, "Dear Shane, if this looks like too much, just delete it. If it's just going to be exhausting, just delete it, and please do not respond unless you want to. There's nothing required of you at all. I just want to tell you that I'm thinking about you, and I'm hurting with you, man, and fight the good fight. May the Lord help you." You may even send him a care package. I'll tell you what, in the next years ahead of him, nothing would help as much for a pipe smoker as getting a care package. Sending them a pipe and saying, "I dedicate this to Hemi," sending him some tobacco, sending him a lighter, blowing some money on Shane to just say, "Hey, dude, I'm just thinking about you, and I don't require anything out of you right now, but just smoke this pipe, man. Puff this pipe." American Indians used to smoke their pipes and see the smoke as a form of prayer or incense going up before the Lord. The Jews used to have an altar of incense in which they burned incense, and the smoke off that incense were the prayers of the saints going up before God as a pleasing fragrance before him. So smoking a pipe, even Johann Bach said that smoking a pipe was like prayer. And certainly at times, as I've been out in the woods praying, I've smoked my pipe as I've talked to the Lord. A care package, man, would be brilliant. Maybe a care package with some cookies or something in it. I don't know. And it doesn't even have to matter what's in the care package. It could be a box of matches. But just the fact that you thought of him enough to send him a package, lighten his load a little bit. And, men don't do real good with cards. Cards can help. Mailing them a card, saying, "Hang in there." But of all those things, care package would be great for me. That's for sure. And then fourthly, doing things that keep you remembering Shane. Maybe a sticky on your rearview mirror, or something on your dashboard in memory of Hemi, or in memory of the Burke family, that keeps you mindful of him the next couple of years. Because remember, every day you eat your breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whatever you're doing, you're carrying on. Everything you do that feels like you're on a level plane, on him, it's going to be uphill. Everything's going to feel hard. Just getting up in the morning and taking a breath and breathing. Getting up and brushing your teeth and finding meaning in life when your boy's gone can be tough, man. And so keeping mind of him in that regard, and just sharing in his pain without anybody, even him, knowing it. Well, what purpose is that? What good is that going to do if I just am in my car feeling his pain? I'll tell you what it does. It keeps intact a good amount of your humanity that this vampire world that we live in sucks out of you every day, so that we can drive around and never see the person next to us in the other car. We're around so much stimulus all the time that we never pay attention to people anymore because we're on our iPhones. And just you getting in your car and remembering that someone is hurting and keeping them in your thoughts puts back, man, it puts back some of the humanity sorely lacking amongst us. And if you can't tell already, this world is slowly losing its humanity. Let's not let that happen in this group. And one of the things you can do is in silence, remember Shane, just grieve with him. The fifth thing you can do, and that's not just long distance, but it's in any kind of relationship where someone's grieving, is don't fix them. Empathy is hard when you remember that you are listening and you are feeling without trying to fix them. You're not going to fix them anyway. As a pastor, and especially in Shane's case, the theodicy question, the question of good and evil and where was God and why did God and all of those things will be asked. And when a person usually asks me those questions, I keep in mind the fact that they really don't want any answers. Answers aren't going to help them. I might give them a theologically correct answer. I might defend God and say He's a good God, a merciful God, and all the platitudes that we learn to say so that we can protect our doctrine. When they're not attacking anything. They're just hurting and they want to know where God was. They're angry at the fact that, they count on God protecting them and stopping these things from happening, and He didn't, and I'd be angry, they're angry. And if you ever read your Bible, if you're a Christian, you'll notice most of the people closest to God were angriest with Him when they felt He didn't come through. So I don't try to fix them, and when they ask those kind of questions, I say, you know what? Even if I had an answer, and I'm not assuming I do, but even if I did, that's not going to help any. An answer to your question won't help any. It's not going to bring him back. I feel that if you really want to know an answer, I can throw something out at you there, but it's not going to make you feel any better. It's not going to make me feel any better. Why don't we just admit that we're hurt and we're too close to the situation? The saying that you're so close to the trees that you can't see the forest. We're not going to be able to see anything right now. This isn't the time for answers. This is the time for grieving. They may be every day wiped out for the next 5 years. It's not yours to try to fix that and say, suck it up, pull yourself up from the bootstraps. There may be others that can. They maybe have counselors that can tell them you need to do some things here so you can function as a mom and dad. But empathy can feel pain, hurt, and not try to fix the person so nobody hurts anymore. Sometimes, man, and the Celts, if you're from Irish descent, Scottish descent, Welsh descent, English descent, the Celtic culture really knew at one time how to make room for grief. Knowing that it's the season of grief and it is just time to not hold anything back and let it go, let it out. Season of grief wasn't about fixing grief, it was about feeling grief. So remember, don't try to fix them. Don't try to tell them how to feel. Don't try to tell them that they're doing it wrong or doing it right, because there is no right or wrong when it comes to grief. There are times when it's another man, for us as man to man, to say to him, I know you're hurting, but you got to suck it up for your family. And that man-to-man conversation is to call that man to his duty, even when he's grieving. And that grief is, don't let your children see you afraid. Don't let your children see your faith rocked. But be strong for them. They need to know. For instance, I had a man in my church, had a wee daughter, and her name was Maya. Maya was about 4, and Maya was a cherub of an angel. Just a wee darling of a little girl. Boy, I tell you. And they had a swing set in their backyard made out of heavy plumbing pipe that was never anchored. And they had a group of the neighborhood kids over, and they were all swinging on this swing, going as high as they could. And Maya was sitting in the lap facing a neighbor child. So she's sitting in her lap facing her, and they're face to face, and they're swinging up and down, swinging up and down. And the centrifugal force or synergy, whatever it might have been, that created it, when they were all up like this, it pulled the swing over. And as the swing came over, the very top of that swing hit Maya in the face. And the trauma was so bad that she bled out in her mother's arms. Her mom was just a few feet away. And they had two other children, a baby and an older little girl. And this was a Christian family in our church, good Christian family. Their faith was very strong. In fact, a couple of days from this incident, the father was going around talking to some of the neighbor children that were there to make sure they were okay. He was comforting them. But in a moment of weakness, he was telling me, his little girl was saying, how can she be saved at night? Will somebody come through the window and get her? Her faith was rocked. And the father was telling me, I had to tell her, I don't know if that could happen or not. And I said, you did what? I said, you need to get your tail back home and let that little girl know God is going to watch over that window. God is going to keep her safe. Nothing bad is going to happen to her. I said, because even though you may not know whether that's true or not, she needs to know it's true. She needs to be comforted. It is your duty to do that, even if your faith is rocked, that your wife can be comforted, that your child can be comforted. You need to be strong for them. But the proviso is, men are called to be that, but men also need one or two men in their lives with whom they can be weak. You need to be strong for everybody else. And your wife may want you to be weak. She may need to see you be weak at times. You may have to pretend to be weak for her, if that's what she needs. But what she really wants and what she really desires is not that you're weak, but that you're strong. But that you're strong in a tender warrior kind of a way. So, man, I hope this helps you. Shane, if you're listening to this, I hope I did you justice. But I thought you guys might benefit, and gals benefit from this, and I hope it helps you. These are some of the things that govern what I do when helping people grieve. Unfortunately, in my ministry, I've had to throw dirt on the faces of more children than I'd like to say. And it's tough all the way around. It's a hard world. But what's important during times like this, guys, gals, is that we don't do nothing. That because you don't know what to do, you don't do anything. Because that can be or come across as very uncaring. And like I said before, part of this is just for the purpose of our maintaining our own humanity in a world that's growing less and less caring and altruistic. So that's it for today. I hope this isn't a buzzkill. I don't know if it helped or not. Maybe this was just for me. Next week, I'll be at the coast. Clean air, pipe in my mouth, doing some videos from there as a much needed vacation. But until I talk to you again, may the Lord bless and keep you. Sláinte.